When a cartoon is really good, like Peppa Pig, Bluey, and Disney movies, it's common for copies to show up inspired by them. But some of these animations are honestly very strange. Are you ready to see the most copied cartoons in the world? So grab your popcorn and get comfy on the couch. Another Cinewave is starting. Chipchilla. Chipchilla is absolutely, without a doubt, a big copy of Bluey. And let's be clear, this actually makes the Chinchilla family cartoon pretty fun. But this series is so similar to the Healer family story that you are going to be shocked. To start, in both shows, the father of the family is the one who leads the games and imaginative play, which is great and shows a side of caring and teaching from the dads. The relationship between the moms in both series is also very interesting. You know that Bluey's mother's name is Chili, but what about Chip's mom? The protagonist's mother is named Chinny, which sounds very close to Bluey's mom's name, don't you think? When you look at both shows, it's really easy to see that Chipchilla has artwork that looks very similar. The background settings are almost the same, and the idea behind the episodes is also similar. That's why we know the creators of Chipchilla were heavily inspired by Bluey when making the Blue Chinchilla family. But the interesting difference is that the protagonist of Chipchilla, besides being a boy, is not the oldest child. He's the middle child. That's pretty cool, right? Today we are going to show you several cartoons that are copies of other series. So grab your popcorn and get comfy on the couch. Another Cinewave is starting. Whisper. You think there are no copies of Masha and the Bear, right? But that's not quite true. In fact, there is a series called Whisper that was made in the United Kingdom. This cartoon stars a girl named Whisper, and she has one of the coolest magical powers in the world. The main character can talk to animals, in the same way that Masha interacts with the bear in the Russian animated show. But the difference is that Whisper lives with her parents, and she talks to many different animals that are her friends, not just one bear. And one interesting thing is that we can actually hear the voices of the animal friends in Whisper. But even with the differences, it's very clear that Whisper was heavily inspired by Masha and the Bear. And it really is a fun animation, because the protagonist uses her abilities to help animals overcome their fears, like when she helped a polar bear lose his fear of swimming in cold water. So if you enjoy Masha and the Bear, Whisper might be a really fun cartoon to watch. Miracle Star. The Amazing World of Gumball has a copy that is bizarre. More than that, it's almost scary how similar it is. We're talking about the Chinese cartoon Miracle Star, which didn't start as a show to tell a story, but because the creators wanted to sell goat milk from a Chinese brand. And let's make one thing clear. Making references or homages is normal, but Miracle Star is not that. This show copied Gumball in almost everything. The backgrounds, the visual style, and even the character roles. The main character is a goat who has a best friend who is a frog, while in Gumball, the main character is a cat with a best friend who is a fish. And when everyone realized the episodes were basically the same, Gumball fans started criticizing Miracle Star a lot. And even though the copy was obvious, Cartoon Network, the company that owns Gumball, never sued the creators of Miracle Star. And the reason is actually funny. The Amazing World of Gumball is a comedy show, so of course they would make a joke out of it. Cartoon Network made an episode called The Copycats. The story begins with Gumball's family entering a grocery store, where Darwin finds a bunch of weird foods. One of them is the same goat milk Miracle Star was trying to sell. In this story, the characters from Miracle Star appear and try to imitate everything Gumball's family does. It was such a funny joke that Miracle Star ended up stopping production completely. Antz. Everyone thinks the DreamWorks movie Antz was copied by Pixar's A Bug's Life. Even though both animated films came out in the same year, you can say the stories are still a little different. But there is another movie that definitely copied the world of Antz. The film is The Ant Bully, which shows a human boy named Lucas who always hated ants. Not because he was actually mean, but because in the human world, Lucas was a small kid who suffered bullying at school, and to vent his anger, he would destroy the ant colony. In the story, the ants use a magic power to make Lucas shrink to their size. But what's interesting is that the stories themselves are not very similar. Even so, it's still considered a copy because if you look closely at the ant designs, they are exactly the same style. The creators of the Ant Bully clearly used the DreamWorks film as inspiration. Don't you think so? Do you prefer Disney movies or DreamWorks movies? Comment #cartoon so we can get to know you. Cars. If you're looking for a bizarre copy of Pixar's Cars, don't worry because we've found one. There is a movie called A Car's Life, and the main character looks like a very bad imitation of Lightning McQueen. The idea of the story is basically the same. A red car goes to another town, meets new cars who treat him kindly, and our protagonist learns important life lessons. But the animation in this knockoff film is, unfortunately, extremely ugly, and people didn't like the story. Not only because it copies the Disney movie, but also because the animation looks very strange. Curious to watch it? Nemo. Pixar movies are copied all the time, and Finding Nemo is no exception. Shark Tale from DreamWorks decided to be a superhero-style story set in the ocean. And even though the plots are different, you'll notice that Nemo has everything to do with Shark Tale. The story shows a fish who is full of fear and has to gain courage to solve a big problem in the ocean. The protagonist pretends to be a hero who defeats sharks, all because he becomes friends with a gentle shark. And this idea definitely came from Nemo's shark scene, where the sharks were all friends and refused to eat fish. That's pretty cool, right? Madagascar. But does Disney ever copy a movie? Yes! This actually happened in 2006, when the Mickey Studios decided to copy the movie Madagascar. If we tell you that there's a story about a lion who lives in the New York City Zoo, and he is forced to leave because someone close to him wants to explore the world outside, which movie do you think of? That's the plot of The Wild, the Disney movie that is a bizarre copy of Madagascar, but almost nobody knows about it because fans didn't really care to watch something so similar. Would you watch this movie? Monsters. Monsters Inc. has a French brother called A Monster in Paris. In the Pixar story, we meet two characters who live in the world of monsters, and they end up having to hide a very cute little girl who enters the strange creature dimension. But the French movie is exactly the opposite. The main characters have to hide a monster who entered the real world and needs to stay hidden so people don't find out about him. The story in the French animation is full of music and dancing, but it also feels a little eerie because a lot of people didn't really like the animation style. Would you want to watch this movie? We would love to have you as a friend. The subscribe button is right there, waiting for you. How about clicking and keeping up with everything we post? Emoji! There is also a copy of Pixar's Inside Out. This animation is called The Emoji Movie, and it takes place inside a smartphone world where the characters are the emojis from our conversations. Just like Inside Out, the emojis represent what we're feeling, and the main character is the meh emoji, the one people use when they're bored. But the main character wants to be more than that. He isn't appreciated, just like sadness wasn't welcome in the command center inside Riley's mind. And because of that, the character from the Emoji Movie ends up going on an adventure through the phone's digital world in a way very similar to joy and sadness inside Riley's head. But it is definitely a very bizarre copy of the Pixar movie. Kiara. There is an Indian animated movie called Kiara the Brave, and it tells the story of a super brave red-haired princess who has to race against time to save her magical kingdom from a powerful villain. It's pretty strange how similar that is to Pixar's Brave, right? Both movies came out around the same time, between 2011 and 2012, and both tell the story of a red-haired princess in a medieval world. So did one movie copy the other? Winx. Do you know the Winx Club? The story of teenage fairies who fight to protect the universe from magical creatures? This show is very famous and even received a modern adaptation on Netflix. But there is also another show called Witch This. Animation is about a group of teenage witches who basically do the same things as the fairies. The shows are extremely similar, and to make it even more interesting, both came from Italy. The stories were so close that the creators actually went to court accusing each other of copying. But who was wrong? The truth is that Winx Club came first in January 2004, while Witch premiered in December of the same year. However, the Witch comic series started in 2001. In the end, the court decided that neither show copied the other, and both ended up being successful. Which one do you prefer, witches or fairies? Chickens! The movie Freebirds, 2005, tells the story of a group of turkeys who discover they are going to be served as food. So they come up with a plan to escape the farm where they live and find a happy place where no one will be hurt by humans. But this story was already told 5 years earlier, not with turkeys, but with chickens. The movie Chicken Run tells a very similar story where the characters live trapped and come up with a plan to escape. But many fans prefer the movie that came first, about the chickens, because the animation style is more fun and the story is more humorous. Do you agree with that? WALL-E. And finally, a lot of people think that DreamWorks' The Wild Robot is very similar to Pixar's WALL-E. Both stories show robots living in a future where the planet is struggling with environmental problems, and in the end, the robot learns to love and appreciate our world. Just like how Eve cares for the Earth in WALL-E, the robot loves our world and overcomes every challenge in a story that has a very similar feeling to the Disney movie. If you've watched The Wild Robot, you definitely thought of WALL-E, didn't you? The fun doesn't stop here. There are 2 amazing videos waiting for you on the screen. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.